Alright, hey guys, welcome to a Gmod suspension tutorial. Today I'm going to be giving you an updated tutorial on how to properly do your suspension. And I've been thinking that this has been something, it's kind of necessary. Because the last most updated tutorial is jackpotties, and that's kind of updated, but kind of not to today's standards, and most of the stuff today is really soft and nice like this. Like this is nice. This is how suspension. I mean, this is a trophy truck, but you get the idea. This is nice. It doesn't break. It's good. But today I'm going to be showing you how to properly do suspension. Now, the old jackpotty way, jackpotty, however you want to say his name. His basically involved, show you an example here. You had your wheel, and you'd set a point above the wheel for a hydraulic or something, and you'd have your hydraulic, and then you'd move your wheel. And of course, this works. This is still used by some people today in the community, but the problem with this is once it gets to a point where the hydraulic doesn't like it, it will break above, and then it will be reversed suspension, and you don't want that. And that can be fixed with rope limiting, but the problem with that is, well, you're going to limit your suspension travel. So, today I'm going to show you here how you should properly be doing this. So, many people may disagree. That's okay with that. You can still do it the other way. There are ways to get rope limiters that work properly, but today I'm just going to be showing you more of an updated way to be doing things. And not only that, elastics. That's what's going to be used today. So, deleted my points, but I'm going to be simply using PA here. It makes things a lot easier. No collide things. Things you're going to want for building. You're definitely going to want PA, precision alignment here. You're going to want precision. This is very helpful. You're going to want axis center, ball socket advanced, ball socket center. These are all very helpful. Another very helpful tool is multi-parent or multi-parent unparent. And of course, advanced duplicator too. This is on GitHub. You have to manually install this into your files. It's very easy, and I might make a video on that too. Anyways. So for most suspension, you're going to want to do a rigid rope, and rigid rope basically makes it a solid rope. Rope is kind of like a bar, a metal bar. You could think of it like that. Also, another tool you're going to want to get is make spherical. This makes your wheels very easy to use on the ground. Difference between make spherical wheels and non-make spherical. Non-make spherical rolls. You can actually kind of see the wheel bouncing a bit, like it's hitting polygons on the hitbox. With make spherical, though, you don't really have an issue with that. Rolls smooth, and that's what you want to use. The problem with stock Gmod hitboxes on round objects, they are not actually perfectly round, even though they look like they are. So this is a key, very key tool to be using in builds that actually require speed. So, simple, we're going to do a simple little part here. I'll make these a little thicker so you can see them. Basically, all I did was left click, right click, which ends the first rope and starts another rope. Left click again. And that's simple suspension travel. This is the most basic shape. This is what you do in all your wheels. Doesn't have to be this wide. Dimensions can be changed. But if you make it too skinny, the wheel's going to want to wobble forwards and backwards like this. You don't want that. Now, we're facing north. Most maps, kinda hard to figure out which way is north. Carcon's a very easy one, because going straight out from spawn, north and south. This is the direction you want to build. Why, you may ask? Your ball sockets are based off of this. Now, easiest way to remember this, people are always really confused on ball socket settings, like which angle is what. And doing yaw, roll, and pitch and stuff, that doesn't really help either. It just kind of makes it confusing too. So this is the easiest way to remember it when you're facing the right direction. Your X is the direction your wheels should be turning, as if you're rolling straight. Now your Y is essentially your camber. That would be leaning the wheel in or out, like this. That's kind of camber right there. That's what you got going on. That's your Y. And your Z, that's actually turning your wheel like this. This is Z. And so, since we're not mounting this to anything here, we're just going to use a very simple wheel attachment ball socket, which is negative 180 on the X minimum and maximum 180 on the maximum. And the rest of these are locked, and you do not want to set these to 0 because it will break the ball socket and it will not be very stable. So the best one to use is 0.01. That is very strong. So basically you set your Y and your Z, the locked number, and you don't have to worry about friction on any of those. And so there's this thing called free movement. You're going to want to tick that. The difference between free movement and a non-free movement ball socket, if you have a non-free movement ball socket, well, you actually attach the wheels together. And that's helpful and all, but when you're making suspension, you want to allow the wheel to move around and everything, right? So, free movement, the wheels can move anywhere on the map, but they will be locked to the same angle. Only the X is allowed to rotate. And by that meaning, we can rotate these wheels and their X direction, no matter what, they're always going to be able to roll. And it's going to work. And that's basic idea there. So that's why you want to use free movement on your suspension. Now we're just going to hit this. Doesn't really matter the order. Doesn't matter where you hit it on the wheel for free movement. It just locks both of these props to your ball socket specifications. Now that we have this very, very simple suspension setup, now you can see we have travel. Very nice. It works. Very simple. Kind of have a little bit of a steep arc to it, but it's basic suspension. Not like you're going to be traveling this far up, this far down. You're only traveling about here on your car. Now, here is a little bit of an advanced part. PA has a lot of cool things, and this looks complicated. It's not complicated at all. Basically, ignore the line and the plane settings for now. The only ones that matter are the points. Specifically, only hit pause and mass center. And both of them do literally exactly what you think they would do. Hit pause snaps to corners or the centers of a prop, and that can be changed by, undoing these settings. But trust me, you don't want to do this. This is very helpful having it to lock around on the edges of the prop. You can also do it here, middle, down on the bottom, on the corners. And then if you want to go mass center, which is kind of obvious, sets it in the very utmost center of the prop, right in the middle. So, now with that being in mind, when you make spherical wheels, you can't really set specific points with hit pause. You can mass center them though. And to make unbreakable suspension, we would need to get rid of the need for having a hydraulic up above the wheel. So this is the more updated way. It sounds a little weird, but you actually, instead of setting your second point for your hydraulic up above the wheel, you set it inside the wheel. And I guess an easier way to explain that for most of the people that might be watching this and they don't understand what I mean by first and second point, you can attach points to props. So you can set a point somewhere, like, actually let's just do it with this one. We got our simple suspension setup. Take this. This is our plate. And let's say, I'll just place it somewhere here. Let's say I want to make a rope from here to here, but the rope's going to be floating and you want it attached to this, right? So what you do, you have your hit pause 1 and you hold shift, or you can select your second point. Do that and you right click. Now right click, basically that highlights the prop and it selects it, right? Now that you have point 2 selected, this prop highlighted, you can click attach. Now instead of being attached to this prop that you set it on, now it is actually attached to this prop here. So if I wanted to, I could press R, go into the menu, go to constraints, and I'll just create a simple rope. And boom! delete our points, and now that's there. It just holds the wheel in place. And that's the constraint. And then you can undo it. Very simple. Now, that's the idea for hydraulic suspension. You do something along the lines of that. You right-click the controller, and hydraulics are nice. And I mean, you can still do this method with hydraulics, but the better choice for your suspension is elastics. Now, this will work on both elastics and hydros, but on hydros, do not set the length setting when you do this, because it's going to be in the very center of the wheel. It does not need a length setting. When you actually have it above the wheel, you're going to need a length setting, so you can set the distance from the actual attachment point on the suspension to the wheel. And if you're going to be doing something with adjustable suspension, maybe a lowrider, for example, something really stupid, then you'd want to use hydraulics, because you can set the length. You can do crazy things like that. But for elastics, and if you're just not going to do a set length hydros, this is basic car suspension, truck suspension, anything that's not special. This is the standard right now for current Gmod. So you're going to set your point 1, mass center, obviously on the wheel. Then you're going to hold shift, do it again. Now you have 2 points on the wheel. Either that, or you can also do your C or your Q menu, doesn't matter. You can click the point and you can manually add it in. And so this is current selected point, and these are both lists of your points, and I'll show you why this is useful here. So basically, this is your input kind of output. That's the easy way to think about it. This is the one you're modifying. This is the one you're not. So if I have 2 here, delete these. Point 1, that's what I have selected. Point 2, and I right click, right? This is the selected one. This is the input. So if I have that selected and I click move, it will move point 2, or the selected prop with point 2, over to point 1. And if I do it the other way, if I have both of these selected, point 1 highlighted, and I do this, and I reverse it, same thing, just in reverse. Very simple. So, now that we have that idea in mind, point 1, hold shift, point 2, right click this, and now that, because point 2 is going to be the one that is attached right here to our plate. And attach that, and now point 1 is attached to the wheel, point 2 is attached here. Now we go to our elastic settings, and this is where it may seem a little complicated. You do not want stretch only on. Now obviously point 1, point 2, those are your 2 attachment points. Now your constant. Good way to think about this is your spring softness, making it 50,000, as that's the max. That will make your spring very stiff. Making it soft will obviously make it soft. Sorry there. Your damping, most people get confused on this. This is something you can kind of consider springiness or the bounciness of it. You don't really want to go very high on this. This doesn't really change strength. This is changing the bounciness and all that. Relative damping. This is kind of your damping while it's moving. This setting doesn't really matter too much if you're just getting into suspension, but if you start playing around with it, you'll find good settings. For now, I'll just kind of place it around. I'll just leave it right there. So, another thing, now that you have the constant and damping figured out, this is weighted 100. That's standard S props wheel weight. This is our plate. We'll set this to like a normal car base plate weight. Maybe actually a quarter of that. So, I don't know, let's say we'll just put a weight in. Make it work. We'll do 350. Obviously, this wheel's a bit big, but if we had a bigger plate, we could do 4 wheels. But this is just a very simple idea here, showing you how to do this. So, now we got our settings. And so this is how these work. Most people get very confused. So ignore relative damping for now. You don't need to worry about this. These are your 2 important ones. These are ones you do not need to worry about unless you're getting very advanced. This is the most simple thing ever. General settings. Basically, you could do 50,000 and maybe around 1,500. And now you may notice an issue if you have your damping set too high. And we create this. A lot of people will be like, So look at this. You know, this works. But most people don't realize they break their suspension if your base plate does not weigh enough. This will happen, and people don't know how to fix it. That is because your damping is set too high. So if your car starts spazzing out, lower your damping levels. And now, if you want to make very stiff suspension that's bouncy, you would do something like around 1,000 here, and then obviously 15 or 50,000 here. Now, if you want to make something very soft, very elegant suspension that's able to ride over jumps well, you would lower this, and lowering this kind of allows it, I guess you could say, to stretch more. It takes a lot of the pressure off and spreads it out. So you could have a higher damping here, and you'd be able to get very soft suspension that rides over jumps perfectly like that truck I just had out. That's very helpful. So we have our very simple elastic created. This is simple of simple, kind of bouncy a bit. Give me a sec, let me all lock this to the wheel. There we go. The world there. This is our suspension. Kind of nice, a little bouncy. It's okay, but it's pretty good overall. And we can roll it, and it'll perform pretty okay. It should at least. Goes over a jump, lands, has some nice rebound and travel, and it's not too soft, not too stiff. Very nice setting. Basically, the baseline for most cars suspension that you kind of want to start out at if you do not have experience, it's about 40 to 50,000 constant with 1,500 damping. That's kind of your basics. But if you're building something very specific, then just remember what I said. If it needs to be stiff, obviously more constant. If you want to make it soft, less constant. But if you want to make it very extremely soft, rides very smooth, you can add a little bit more damping because lowering the constant gives you the ability to do that. Now, of course, the advantage of this, well, you notice suspension doesn't break, and you may not know what I'm talking about, but with the standard setting for hydraulics, let me go find a very old car here. There might be something. Ah, here we go. This is a very old car. This has hydraulics on it in the standard setup where the point is above the wheel. This still works. You can set the length. But the problem with the suspension, you go over a jump too hard, you can break your suspension, and then you have to get out of your car, freeze the plate, fix the suspension, and then you hit a jump too hard again, and you break it. Doesn't work. The thing that's nice about this suspension, have your car, you're going along, you can hit many bumps and jumps as you want, it will not matter. You have suspension that will not break at all. And basically that's the simplistics of it. This suspension will not break. And you want to get really fancy and you don't want an arc like this, you can make the arc a lot less of a steeper angle by using PA, and you can kind of attach points, or you right click a plate, points, point 1, you make sure it's relative to the entity, that's relative to the prop you have highlighted, then you can simply set points. And that's really cool. So you can set a point maybe here for your suspension and here. Then you can mess around with your placement values here. And you can set a point way out here and here. And you can have a suspension that basically has no arc at all. It'll eventually arc when it goes around your center point of your suspension. It would be right here, because this forms a circle here. Then you can basically make a really... You can basically get rid of all the arc out of your suspension, and there's other ways to do that, like making a rope slider. That's essentially one rope going this way, one rope going way out that way, and basically it slides along the point of that, and you can go straight up and down as far as you want. But that is basically the simplistics of suspension. Most of your car weight, you don't want to make them too heavy. Everyone's all concerned about weights. I'd say if you're a beginner, you can leave your wheel weights, your base plate weights. You don't want them generally too light, but depending on the engine you're using, if you're using ACF or anything like that crazy, you can change the weight. You can adjust your suspension. Hopefully now you know how to make updated suspension and you know how to make good suspension. So that's the simplistics of it. Thank you guys if any of you guys watched. And hope to post more videos of stuff like this later.